I'm Ken Weene. Unfortunately, today, my dear friend and co-host, Monica Brinkman, is not with us. But my guest, our guest, I guess anyway, is a wonderful poet named Michael Mark. And Michael, one thing I noticed about you is you like to walk.
Yeah, I do. You're right.
In fact, you've done some rather serious hiking, like in the Himalayas, and you know.
Yeah, I was surprised I can. I walked into an REI and I was fascinated and looked around while my wife was actually shopping at a Target, and I didn't want to be there. And not long after, I saw a movie called The Way with Martin Sheen and his son, and it was about the Camino de Santiago. And I did go, but that's that trip that takes you from, well, there are many Caminos. I've done 3, but they all land in Compostela in Santiago in Spain, and so I've done a few of those. But then, but my first hike, if you can believe it, was the Himalayas.
And you said that was with REI?
No, well, REI was just because I looked around and I said, what is all this sport? What is all this camping equipment about? I mean, I'm from Queens. We take subways. I don't know about walking up hills. So I live there now, but I'm in California now. But it was an unfamiliar world to me, and I was entranced. These people were very serious and very sweet and kind, and they were very careful about what they were buying. And I was just watching. I felt like I was just watching in a museum, looking at these wonderful exhibits. And it just stayed with me. And then when I saw the movie, I go, well, I'm going to try this. But I didn't do the Camino right away. I went to the Himalayas with my son for his graduation from college. We took a trek.
Wonderful. Wonderful. I'll bet that's something that he now will do with your grandchildren if he has children.
Well, that would be wonderful. In fact, on Thursday, I leave because he and I, Alex and I, are going to walk the country of Liechtenstein.
Oh.
Yeah, and I'm going to stay. I'm going to walk a little bit in Switzerland, and he's going to come back because he has to work, and I'm retired. I'm just yeah. So
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
You also happen to be a very fine writer. I know you have a couple books of stories that are available to people, but what I'm most familiar with is your poetry. And recently, you had a chapbook published by Rattle.
Yeah.
Some of our listeners may not know what that means. To me, that's pretty impressive. But what is Rattle?
Well, Rattle is it's a magazine, a poetry magazine dedicated to poetry. They don't publish anything but poetry. They come out 4 times a year. I know by the nature of Duotrope, which is a service that tells you, helps you select where you want to submit your work and where you want to read work, that it has almost a 0.00 chance of acceptance. And I've been lucky, in fact, I got denied. I'll tell you right away, Ken. I was turned down by Rattle the first 16 times I submitted.
Uh-huh.
I know. Well, because they don't charge for submission fees, which most do, and so therefore they're going to get a wider audience, and the competition goes up. Anyway, I've been in there quite a few times, maybe about 9-10 times, and I never wanted to write a book, but my wife of poetry. But my wife was very insistent upon it. She really wanted me to. I kind of wanted to, but I didn't think I could. And there was this contest that they have, and she said, "Are you going to do it?" And I said, "Yes, I'll do it. I promise I'll do it, Lois." And but I put together a bunch of poems, and the day she has such a mind, my wife, we were watching TV and we were 15 minutes away. It was 11:45 at night. We're watching TV late at night. And she turns to me and she says, did you submit? Because today's the deadline. And I said, no, I'm not going to win it. It's not worth it. You got to pay $25 to submit. I'm not going to do it. She gave me like this Darth Vader thing. And she said, you enter. And I just jumped out and I just slapped it together and I entered and I forgot about it. And then I was informed that I won it like months and months later.
I have to share with you, I think your wife and I might be related, because when my wife was painting, she's an artist, and when she was painting, I used to take her to galleries and I'd stand in the door so she couldn't leave until she talked to them.
Great to have an advocate, and of course, as your spouse, what a wonderful thing. I hope that I'm half as good to Lois as she is to me in this regard. She's always believed in me. Pardon me. I mean, I wasn't supposed to be a writer at all. I was on my way. I had already gotten accepted to law school, and I had written a short story. It got published in the literary magazine at SUNY State University of New York in Binghamton. And this guy read it, and he came to my senior seminar in poli-sci. And he walks in the door, and he says, "Who's Michael Mark?" And this guy looked like a Hell's Angel. I mean, he was all in black leather with a black motorcycle helmet, and I didn't raise my hand. I was terrified. Who is this guy? It's the Angel of Death. I didn't know. Turned out it was John Gardner, the famous novelist.
Oh, wow.
And he pulled me out of the class, and he said, because my professor said that's the guy, and my professor knew who he was. And he said, "I think you're a writer." I said, "Well, I'm going to law school." He said, "No, I don't think you should." And I went home. I went back to the dorm and I said, "Lois, this guy named John Gardner," she says, "We're studying him in school, in my class, American literature." I said, "Well, he said I should be a writer. He came into my class." She goes, "You're kidding me." And he was starting the program. This was going to be the first program. And that's what I did. Lois said, "Yep, drop out. Do not go to law school. You should be a writer." What can I do?
Great story. So,
Yeah.
so you went to a grad program in writing? Or?
Well, yeah, but I was so far behind everyone. Ken, I mean, these people are serious writers from around the world, these students who dedicated their lives up until that point, really great part to writing. I could hardly read. I had very bad dyslexia. I just told that story. I wrote it down. That's it. And John Gardner and I worked one-on-one for 2 years. And it was amazing. It was an amazing experience. It's hard to even put into words. Certainly I can't, but it happened.
And he discovered you because he discovered talent. Now, this chapbook that Rattle has brought out, as you say, I mean, traditionally you were not a poet, but this is a wonderful poetry. And it has an interesting title. Visiting her in Queens is more enlightening than a month in a monastery in Tibet.
Yeah.
That's a rather long mouthful.
It is. In fact, this was originally published. That poem is the title poem. The title is from the poem in the book. And it was originally published in the Sun magazine, if you know that magazine. And the editor, when accepting it, said, "I want this poem that has a title that's longer than God's necktie." That was the acceptance letter.
I love it.
Don Fransky, brilliant man, and fantastic publication. If you don't know The Sun, it's just remarkable, incredible writing. Yeah, I was lucky.
Yeah. So how about, would you like to read one of the poems?
Yeah, sure, I'd be happy to. I'd be happy to.
And I think we're going to add another one at the end, folks. So you get to see.
Well, the book, as you know, Ken, because you've read it, and I appreciate this opportunity to talk about it, so thank you very kindly. It deals with my mother's Alzheimer's. My mom had Alzheimer's and now is passed, almost 3 years. I have been a hospice volunteer specializing in memory care for about 8 years. So I was tuned into my mom's situation maybe quite a bit before my rest of my family. And this is a letter to my mom, an epistolary poem I actually wrote in San Francisco. I walked out of the hotel a little early. We were really close to the San Francisco Golden Gate Bridge, and it came to me. Watching the Golden Gate Bridge disappear. Mom, I'm in San Francisco, and the bridge is being taken away. The East Tower is completely gone. All morning, the pillars resisted the fog until they were exhausted. Was it like that for you when you didn't know how to make your famous tuna the way I liked it anymore? And you kept calling me the mean tailor. I needed to take in your house dress. You'd gotten so thin. The suspension cables barely peek out now, and the cars are creeping into the invisible. It's getting hard to remember how it was. The locals tell me to just wait. In a moment, the whole bridge will return with the cars, the boats, the bay, the sun.
That is fabulous. And it really, develops the metaphor so beautifully and leaves us haunted because, of course, we know that your mother's memory won't return like the sun. It's really a beautiful, beautiful piece of poetry.
Thank
So, how can people order this wonderful chapbook by the name of Visiting Her in Queens is More Enlightening Than a Month in a Monastery in Tibet?
There's a link I could supply. I think I might have sent to you, and it's only through Rattle because you see, Rattle has, I think, the widest distribution of any poetry magazine. Perhaps maybe it's comparable to, I suppose, Poetry Magazine or the Parish Review. So already, from what and this is supposed, I mean, I got a note from the editor saying it's by far the best-selling book they've ever had in the 20 that they put out.
Deserves to be.
Yeah.
I want to tell you, folks, that right at the moment, if you go to Rattle and you go and you look for Michael Mark book, they even have a special right now that instead of just getting that one, you get 4 chapbooks plus a year's subscription to the magazine for $25. But if you just want to buy the chapbook, it's only $6, and I think it's beautiful.
And that includes shipping. I sound like a late night TV, but it does include. Amazing. So, well, that's very kind of you.
And of course, we're going to have down below, folks, as we always do, we're going to have that link to so you can just click on it and order your copy of this wonderful chapbook. So, are you going to write some more poetry?
Oh, I'm writing constantly. I average, I would say, Ken, at least 10 hours a day, 7 days a week, but mostly probably closer to 12 to 14 every day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Once it's in your blood, the ink doesn't go out. I said, once you got the ink in your blood, it just doesn't go away.
Well, in fact, the truth of the matter is my first 2 books, like you were talking about earlier, were, published by Macmillan and Athenaeum, but I couldn't make the living that I wanted. When Lois and I were married, I met Lois in college, as I mentioned. We wanted to have children. So I stopped writing for more than 30 years, and I didn't write a word. And I thought it was gone. I knew I needed to make a living, and that was what I had to do, and I wanted to do, and so I had to put this away. When I retired, I didn't feel I could write long form anymore, so I started writing poems, and I feel so fortunate. I got a chance to study in some schools now, and I drop out of every one of I do. I've dropped out of 3 graduate programs: Warren Wilson, San Diego State, Pacific University. I take what I can. It takes me a while to process. I work on it, then I go to another school. It's not the normal way of going, but it's
It works for you. So what the heck? I have to say, I like you. I wanted to be a writer, was pushed into a different field, and ended up toward the end of my career writing more and more. And now that I'm retired, like you, I write. And in fact, I just had a book of poetry published by Cyberwit.
Oh, thanks. I look forward to reading that. That's wonderful. Congrats.
And so I really, I love the writing process. And like you, I think the best way to grow in writing is do it, interact with other people who are doing it, and continuously grow. I think graduate programs are fine until they become not fine.
Well, I don't know how to do it because I work a certain pace. I couldn't keep up. The community, as you say, was excellent. The discipline, the rigor that they provide and teach, they taught me how to read.
Right.
Poem. How to listen. It changed my life. It's now the lens by which I use to examine everything. It's my main lens. In my relationships, if there was a crack in the ceiling, it doesn't matter what. I'm looking through poems, poetry, prosody. So I'm indebted to those programs. I learned a lot, and they were remarkable people, the teachers as well as my fellow students.
Well, I belong to a small group.
Mm-hmm.
And we meet once a week on Zoom and critique one another's work and grow. And I find that wonderful method.
Oh, I do that as well. At one point, at one time, 9 different workshops.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
Because I'm obsessive. I'm trying to catch up all those years I didn't write.
I hope you have lots of years ahead of you to keep adding to this work, because again, folks, you really want to buy Visiting Her in Queens is more enlightening than a month in a monastery in Tibet. It is my wonderful guest, Michael Marks, chapbook from Rattle. And I got to tell you, really, wow, just wow. And thank you so much for joining us today, Michael.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you for having me. The center of the universe keeps moving. The center of the universe keeps moving on me. Lunchtime, it was in the salad place on 4th. The woman with plastic gloves, thumb-smashing cloves in the silver bowl with the sweet ginger and turmeric dressing. Then in the plump folds of our zoo's newborn hippo, in the nostril of a cloud, I showed a suited stranger late to a party, whose pointer finger kept drifting. Over I guided, over. In matters of the center, exactitude has its place. There, between us, in the air, in his words, I gave him my glasses, but the stranger wobbled off. The center of the universe, rowing in his shadow, uninvited.